Hey everybody, and welcome back to Front-End Expert. In this video, we will be discussing connecting our JavaScript back to our HTML. So here in this example, we have some HTML with a button that says, click me, and when we click it, nothing happens. The reason that nothing happens is because we don't have any JavaScript here. We've written a file called scripts.js, and if we open that file, we can see that it is some JavaScript code. The first thing it does is it gets the button element off of the page, which we will see how to do in the DOM manipulation video. But essentially, it just gets that element out of the DOM and saves it in this constant. Then it adds an event listener to the button, saying that when the button is clicked, run the set background color function. And all this function does is it sets the background of the body with document.body.style.background color, and it sets it equal to this value here. So if we want to link this into our HTML, it makes sense that this would go in the head. The reason being that this is code that isn't going to be part of the content. This doesn't need to be displayed on the page. And we can use a script tag for this. So we can use the script tag, and the script tag is actually not a self-closing tag. The reason being that you can actually write JavaScript code directly inside of here. So I could say like console.log hello world directly inside of here, but we tend to not actually do this. Most of the time, what we will do is we will link in a JavaScript file. So we can say src for source and set this equal to the path to the file, either relative or absolute. In this case, it will just be script.js. And now I can save this. And when I click on the button, it's still not going to work. We've linked the script in, but it's still not working. Why is that? Well, if we look at this code and we think about it in the way that the browser would, the browser is going to look at it from top to bottom. So it'll start on line 1, line 2, 3, 4, 5. And when it gets to line 5, it finds the script tag. When it finds the script tag, it goes and it downloads this file, and then it reads that file. So it comes into here, and the first thing it does is it says, okay, const button is document.querySelector button. But what's the problem here? This button doesn't exist yet. It doesn't exist until line 8 of the HTML, but we're still on line 5. So this is an issue, right? Our code needs to have access to the completed DOM, but it doesn't. It only has access to what existed before it. So there's a few different solutions to this, and we'll look at all of them. The first and most obvious one is, okay, we can take this script tag and just move it to the bottom. Let's put it at the bottom of the body. Now, this doesn't make a ton of semantic sense. Why is our script tag inside of the body? But it will actually work. So now we can click this button and you can see that the background color does change. But this has a few problems. The main one that I already mentioned can be just the semantics of it. It's a little bit strange to have a script tag in the body. But the other issue here is that if we had a very long HTML file, this script won't be downloaded at all until we're at the bottom of the body. And it's just going to take extra time because before we even start looking at this script, we have to finish downloading the entire body and parsing that HTML into the DOM. That said, this is usually the most common way that people have historically done this. However, there are newer options that work a little bit better. For now, let's move this back into the head, and let's look at a few of the other options that we have. One option we have is to solve this in JavaScript. In our JavaScript file, we can come back to script.js, and we can write some code to say, just wait for the browser to be done. What we can do is we can look at the window object, which is going to be an object representing the entire window essentially, and we can add an event on this object to wait for it to be done parsing our HTML. So we can say window.addEventListener, and the event that we want to listen for is going to be DOM content loaded. And when it's loaded, let's just call some function. We'll call it main. And then I will create a function, call it main, and put all of this code inside of it. Essentially, we're doing the same thing, but we're not running any of this code until this event fires. So now we should be able to click this button and everything will work as you expect. And it's also worth noting that there's one more event that we could listen to, and that is going to be load. And this will work the same way. It's going to have the same effect. The difference between load and DOM content loaded is that load is waiting for all of the images to finish loading and for all of the style sheets to finish loading, whereas DOM content loaded is just waiting for the browser to finish creating the DOM tree. But regardless, this probably isn't a great option either. It just makes our JavaScript a little bit uglier. There's a lot more code here. So what I'm going to do is get rid of this as well and go back to what we had before. Now let's move back over to the HTML, and in our script tag, there's actually two attributes that we can set here that can help us solve this. So the more common one is going to be defer, and defer does basically what we just did in JavaScript, but it does it through the HTML for us. So what this is going to say is download this script and parse it, but don't actually start running it. So don't execute any of this code until the DOM content loaded event has fired. So this is essentially doing the same thing we had before. And now you'll see we are able to click the button and it will work just as we expect. Now, this is the solution that I would usually recommend. I think most of the time, this is going to be the best option. We get the output that we want in terms of our JavaScript is not being executed until the DOM is done loading, but we also get cleaner JavaScript and cleaner HTML code by not having to move the script into the body. Now there's one more Boolean attribute that we can use here, and that is async. Async works fairly similar to defer, but the difference is async says, load the script in asynchronously, then when it is ready, just execute it. So it's not going to block the page from loading while it downloads. Essentially, the browser will immediately download the script, but then it will move on to the body while it waits. But once the script finishes downloading, it will pause loading in the DOM to run the script. That said, this can lead to some inconsistent behaviors based on how quickly the browser is able to finish loading in the DOM as well as finish loading in the script. So you'll only want to use async when the script is not reliant on the DOM existing when it is first loaded. So one thing we might use this for is if you have some script related to metrics tracking, or maybe related to advertisements that you don't need at the very beginning of when the page is loaded, then we can load those scripts in asynchronously and they will be ready for us when we need them. But for the case of what we are doing here, we are going to want the defer attribute, and this is the attribute we will usually want. And with that, that's going to be the end of this video on connecting JavaScript back to HTML. I hope it helped demystify a bit of what exactly is happening with these script tags and where we need to put them and what attributes we need to be able to properly link our JavaScript back to our web page. So with that, that'll be the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.